is now joining.
Sound check. Brian Alston, can you hear me? You're right there, aren't you?
I am on it? Okay.
I'm almost on.
Okay.
Good, how are you? They're coming. There was a glitch with the order. I don't know what, but they're on the way. Okay. Yeah, they'll be here about 1. No. 1, right. No, it was not staff fault. It was the system fault. Yeah. Morning. How are you? No. Oh, Nia, just let me know she's feeling under the weather. She's not going to be here at all. I don't think she's connecting remotely either. Should I let Cynthia know that she's coming to the table?
Once I saw they started talking about PM245, I said, that's a wrap.
I have all the slides. So here I just saw University of Illinois Hospital as a contractor. Does it mean they can't?
I'd like to call the meeting of the board to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Bott is absent. Director Curry?
Present.
Director Garza is absent. Director Harrington?
Present.
Director Kim? Present. Director Ryder?
Writer's here.
Director Robinson?
Present.
Director Sorrell?
Present.
Director Webster Cross is absent, and Chair Taylor.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The next regular meeting of the board will be held on Friday, August 23rd at 9 a.m., we hope. At this point, I don't think we don't have any directors joining remotely at this point. So the first item is the resolution honoring the life and service of our vice chair, the Honorable Dr. Dennis Deere. We briefly spoke about it last month and held a moment of silence to recognize his passing, but wanted to introduce the resolution this month so his family, including his wife Barbara, could be present for it. I'd like to begin by having the resolution read into the record by the secretary. I will then provide comments and will offer the opportunity for directors to comment, starting with Director Ryder. Dr. Mercaitis will then provide remarks, and if Ms. Deere would like to say a few words, we'll invite her to do so as well.
Resolution honoring the life and service of Commissioner Dennis Deere, Ph.D. Whereas Dennis Deere, born on August 7, 1972, was a proud resident of Chicago's North Lawndale neighborhood of Chicago and dedicated his life's work to public service and uplifting communities on the West Side and across Cook County. And whereas Dennis Deere earned a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Special Education and a Master of Science in Rehabilitation Psychology from the Jackson State University, and later a PhD in Christian psychology from Agape Theological Institute. And whereas Dennis Deere returned to Chicago and founded Deere Rehabilitation Services to support the advancement of justice-involved individuals. He continued his nonprofit work as Vice President of Organizational Health and Management for Lawndale Christian Legal Center and as a revered community organizer. And whereas in 2017, Dennis Deere was appointed to serve as Commissioner of Cook County's 2nd District. He was elected to the seat in 2018 and continued to serve honorably until his untimely passing on June 23, 2024. And whereas Commissioner Deere chaired the Cook County Board's Health and Hospitals Committee and also served as Vice Chair of the Cook County Health Board of Directors. In these roles, he provided significant contributions to the health system, championing essential causes including food as medicine, behavioral health care, violence prevention, organ donation, and developing the next generation of healthcare leaders. And whereas faith and family were his foremost pillars in Commissioner Deere's life and inspired his extraordinary work as a public servant. He married his high school sweetheart, Barbara, and together they proudly raised 3 children, Canaan, Caleb, and Trinity. And whereas, as a stalwart champion of public health and unwavering advocate for his constituents, Commissioner Deere made a profound and lasting positive impact on the health of Cook County residents. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the Cook County Health Board of Directors, on behalf of the entire Cook County Health team and the individuals we serve, extends its deep gratitude to Commissioner Deere for his exceptional expertise, public health, and leadership. Indeed.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Actually, as I was reflecting on Vice Chair Deere, was one of the main reasons why I agreed to join this board, and actually his support and advocacy for all the work we do was actually, it's been really critical, and I will always remember it. We know he was an integral member of our board. He was a stalwart champion of Cook County health and was a passionate advocate in many areas, including equity and improving healthcare opportunities for the community, all communities. Right? He was particularly focused on destigmatizing and improving behavioral health services. His groundbreaking Cook County Board resolution declaring mental health a public health crisis, which was passed in 2021, was instrumental in providing strategic focus for several initiatives created to increase public awareness of behavioral health services and improve and expand those services here in our community. The loss of Vice Chair Deere is sorely felt by everyone who was so fortunate to be a part of his life. What is striking about the comments made since his passing is that first and foremost, he was referred to as a friend by all. He was gentle, quiet, kind, compassionate, calming, and patient, which is perhaps the antithesis of what we expect in a politician. But those qualities made him a giant in every area he touched, including this organization. I would like to extend my heartfelt condolences to his family, including his beloved wife, Barbara, who was his high school sweetheart, as we recognized in the resolution, his cherished children, sons Caleb and Canaan, and daughter Trinity. We know he was utterly devoted to you all. And we'd like to thank you for sharing him with us for a time. As he was perhaps the best example of humanity we will ever get a chance to experience. So thank you. I'd like to provide the opportunity for directors to provide comments as well. Director Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last week I spoke at the county board and I had to organize my thoughts. So I wrote them down. It's a big body, a lot of press there, a lot of Dennis's colleagues. This is more of a family environment. And Barbara, I think as people, we did a little bit of this last month, as people offer their thoughts, you're going to find out that this is more of a family, and you're going to learn how Dennis actually helped stack the deck for Deerism to run rampant through Cook County Health. I just want to start by saying I know that, you know, Dennis's life in politics and activism, you didn't get to meet probably all of us along that journey the last 6.5 years, maybe maybe you've run into our names or you got a check through Juneteenth from our organizations. I want you to know that your husband was very important to me, and he was a dear friend. I spent a lot of time with him on the telephone, in person. I remember inviting him to go to the Irish Fellowship Club dinner with me, right, 6 months after he got appointed. It was our first personal experience. He shows up and sat with me and my wife. He got appointed to this board, and our friendship was fast and multidimensional. In fact, when I go and see Deadpool and Wolverine this weekend, Dennis is going to be in my heart. Dennis advocated for me as a person too, on this body, behind the scenes. You're not going to always find this in life, because people right now are paying tribute to him. But I want you to know that I am always going to be loyal to Dennis's memory and to what that means in his legacy. And I will make sure that everyone that I work with also honors that legacy, and that they don't walk all over it, because he was an extraordinary human being who gave more than he could ever take. He believed in this body and what public health could do, what mental health resources, and what the hospital could do, because those are all interrelated but specific things. He embraced all of this. In addition to the work he did around raising visibility and creating space for those in the Black community on the west and south side, work that you, I know, joined with him in. Your husband, and this is something that I think we all shared. Dennis, I haven't heard from you. Oh, I've been in the hospital for a couple weeks, but I think I'm going to be getting out in the next couple of days. Maybe tomorrow. He was always positive, even when he knew he was bullshitting. Even when he knew he was bullshit, he was putting the best face possible. He wasn't misleading you. He didn't want you to worry about him. And he kept a lot of that in. And there was a comment, everyone, you remember hearing this. Look back at your last text message with Dennis. My last one was to make sure I got my check-in to Juneteenth. But before that, Dennis and I would engage in a lot of banter. But the last text message that I had from him where we were having a conversation was a conversation. It was a conversation about his health. It was after he got sick in February. I talked to him about a month before his passing, when he was still wheeling and dealing with some issues that we had at the county in terms of some policy around workers, which he was a very strong advocate of the labor movement and of workers' rights. And I called him up. I said, Dennis, I need your help with this. He's like, I'm good. And then it wasn't just that he was good and he was just taking care of the people that, would give him political support. He knew why he was supporting us and the impact that it would have and the importance of protecting workers. He knew that they were his constituents. He was concerned about making sure that we were giving Black business owners a fair shot. But he also understood that Black business can't succeed if there's not also Black workers that are being respected. So I'm taking a little bit more time than I should, but I feel like this is one of my opportunities to really say out loud things that I've wanted to say since June 23rd. So thank you to you and your children for sharing him with us, for I'm sure keeping him in the spirit that he's been in since you guys started on this journey together as teenagers. You don't get to be such a guy full of such joy without having people with joy back at home with you. So, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'd like to also acknowledge, the presence of Director Garza. Thank you. Any other directors?
Just briefly, I'd just like to say Dennis was a, great mentor to me in the 4 years that I served on the board. We shared a lot of very important goals of this board to succeed here, especially in the equity space, which is so critically important. And he made sure that we always kept that in front of us to follow up, to make sure that the promises and commitments and obligations that we had relative to Black and other underrepresented business partners in these communities were taken care of. I enjoyed my conversations with him immensely, and he brought to me some significant comfort during a challenging time for myself and my family. He made clear that he was standing with us and behind us. I'm going to miss him. We talk about dearisms, and I for the next couple meetings at least, I think I heard Director Wright say it. It won't be present, but it will be that Bob is here. He had Dear is here, and I missed that. It resonated in such a way, it's left a hole. So I'm going to try to honor that in that small way. Thank you.
Yeah, I will miss Dennis as well. It's interesting how I got to meet him, and I think I said this when we last met and talked about him. It was probably more than 10 years ago, and for a number of years, almost 20 years, I was involved with the conduct of the African Festival of the Arts, one of the largest African diaspora-focused events in the country. And I got a call from Dennis one day. I didn't know him. He said Congressman Davis had given him my number because he wanted to come to the African Festival of the Arts and bring his family. So for a number of years, his wife probably doesn't remember, I was the person who he would call, and I would come out to the car in jeans and a T-shirt, and I would give them their parking pass and bring them into the festival. And so fast forward, I understand that it was Dennis that actually nominated me for this position on the board. And so I owe him a debt of gratitude for that. And we became close in terms of just knowing each other and being friends and colleagues. But what I'll probably miss most about Dennis is his upbeat manner. I've never met anybody, no matter what he was going through, that was always smiling, always ready to crack a joke, always ready to shake a hand. And I don't think any of us will forget his upbeat manner. And he never talked about some of the things that he was going through, although he was going through a lot. And I think it was a shock to all of us, not only his death, what he'd been going through in terms of his health for years. The other things, he was probably one of the most consistent people that I've ever met. When he took a position, he was firm, and that was it, and nobody was going to change his mind, and he was pushing to get his way. He was unbelievably confident. You know, some people measure stature in terms of health and in terms of height, and Dennis was probably not the tallest man in the world, but he stood like a giant in many rooms in terms of just his presence and what he was able to do. And lastly, we both shared a passion for uplifting underserved communities throughout the city. And so my hope is that he will be remembered, and I believe that he'll be remembered not only in the city of Chicago, but I know the county of Cook, the state of Illinois, and probably nationally moving forward. And you have my deepest condolences.
I was reminded of a couple things. The first thing I thought about is how Dennis and I met was because of our company, and he was formerly a small business owner as well. And then I thought about something else. When my wife and I, you know, he's a politician, so you give funds to people that you believe are doing the right thing. And so we wrote a check, and he gave us a phone call. He said, "Hey, I think you guys gave me too much. I said, no, this is a personal donation because we know what you do. And at his celebration, that really just reinforced it because he does far more than we thought he did. We were both present, and to see how much he affected people and how personal he was to everyone, because everyone thought he was his best friend. And I was looking at my phone when Bob was speaking, looking at the last text that I had with him, because apparently he was a text master, because everybody thought that it was a personal relationship, which it was. But the ability that he demonstrated to connect with individual people, to make them feel special, even those who were just as confident, he still was able to bring across that, hey, that's what's up. And I appreciate those terms because I'm a kid of the 80s as well, and the 70s. So those terminologies that you, I didn't think of it as dearisms because that's kind of how I think and speak myself. So I really appreciate him. Therefore, I appreciate you. And definitely you have my condolences as well as my wife's condolences.
In just this last year, which is when the time that I've been able to have gotten to know Commissioner Deere, all of our discussions were about his other passion in terms of mental health, for behavioral health services. And even though at times or events, or I asked him to come to one of our events that we had called Blue Christmas, where we not only recognize those who may be experiencing substance use, but sadly those who maybe have been lost to substance use. As everyone has said, and as directors, in terms of not only the joy, but the optimism that he had, he spoke that optimism and joy to those that attended our Blue Christmas. Not only in explaining how he was truly a miracle to have been here because of some of the issues that he had and just the placement of his heart, but that recognizing that overcoming all of those and still moving forward was the path that those who were on a journey of recovery for substance use would also be on. Now, we joked with him because we asked him to talk for about 3 minutes, and he talked about 10 minutes, and we were like, okay, I'm going to play the Oscar music. But he also said he was here and that God had him here to speak and to share and to show what he knew and his road and his path to those that were also traveling through a troubled path. And I think that was the foundation that he had throughout everything that he did, not only in mental health, but in working for the underserved, but in truly being a role model as a human being. And that's a force and an energy that he had through his life, and that will not be dimmed through that energy and force even in his passing, because you hear the statements that are being made about how his dearisms, his activities, that force and that energy will also continue to propel us. I hope it gives you comfort in this time, and you have my deepest condolences to you and your family on that incredible force and energy transition.
I met him about 6 years ago, and we would do dinners down at Dina, and just pontificate about, how to make things better. It was 3.5 years ago that I called him. My father had passed, and, as a result of complications due to COVID, and we just couldn't find a place to worship for him, because at the time parishes were not allowing worship in their settings. And I don't know I guess what came over me is knowing Dennis, knowing his sincerity, knowing his love for people. And I just picked up the phone. I said, hey, lost my father yesterday. Would mean a lot to my mom. He could help us figure out a way to memorialize his passing. And Dennis said, give me a few minutes and I'll get back to you. He called the pastor of Longdale Christian, and they set it up to happen that following Saturday. So my brother and I spoke to Dennis for about an hour. Dennis wanted to know my father through our experiences and stories, and so he took that all in. He went back and spoke to the pastor, and they hosted my family in a private event at Longdale Christian. And I'll just never forget forget how much it meant to my mom, especially, and certainly the grandchildren. Dennis was there, you might remember, this was, February, cold day, and, it's really such an incredible, unselfish thing for him to do in light of everything that was going on in the first year of COVID. And I spoke to my mom a few weeks ago about his passing, and I mean, she felt it. She was really upset because she remembered what that meant to her. And I just want to bring our love and support for you and your family, your son, and just thank you once again for supporting him in the way that you did, because I know that contributed to the person he was. It means a lot for my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Directors. Now, Dr. McHider.
Thank you very much, Chair Taylor. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the health system. Cook County lost a healthcare champion with the passing of Commissioner Deere. As Vice Chair of the Board, Commissioner Deere provided steadfast leadership to our health system with an exceptional focus on health equity. He was passionate about advancing the well-being of Cook County residents. He demonstrated this commitment in both his words and actions and inspired others to do the same. We see his impact across our health system with the investment in behavioral health services, care for justice-involved patients, the Providence Scholarship, and food as medicine. I'm grateful for his leadership, his support, and the important role he played in our organization, including his central focus on improving the health of people across the county. Commissioner Deere's life work will serve as a source of inspiration for us as we carry on his legacy. What always struck me about Commissioner Deere is that he was a man committed to faith and family, the pillars of his life that bolstered his civic work. He married Barbara, which we've heard more than once was his high school sweetheart, and was tremendously proud of his 3 children. Our hearts and prayers go out to you, Barbara, and your entire family during this difficult time. Please know that his advocacy will live on throughout Cook County Health and within our mission to protect and uplift the health and well-being of the residents of Cook County.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to welcome Ms. Barbara Deere. She'd like to have a few words.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for honoring my husband. I always tell my story. Dennis and I were high school sweethearts. We met 34 years ago, and we, met in high school, went through college together, grad school, took some time off and enjoyed life, and had our children, who are now all young adults. Dennis was always a great person, great husband, great father. And he's always had integrity, and wanted the best for everybody. And his strength gives me strength. So, but I'm so grateful to all of you for sharing the stories and the way that he has touched your lives. He was very passionate about health equity, mental health, community, and he did that up until the last moment. So his life was not in vain. It was powerful, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate all that you shared. So I worked tirelessly right beside him, and we had some of the same passions, and so do our children. So his legacy will continue. And again, thank you so much for honoring him this morning. I'm truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing him with us. Yeah. We really thank you.
You're welcome.
At this point, if there are no further comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 2, the resolution honoring the life and service of CCH Vice Chair, the Honorable Dr. Dennis Deere. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'd just like to acknowledge that Joel Harrington and I just had a whole conversation just with our eyeballs.
There's a lot of discussion. Appreciate it. Given that, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item on today's agenda is employee recognition, which will be reviewed by you, by Dr. McIce.
Okay, good morning once again. Okay.
Yes. That's what we're just talking about. We let him get a report, we do this. Everybody. All right. Okay. Yeah, it's cool. What? Yeah. Yeah, I saw that, did I tell them? I know.
Okay. All right, so as always, we will start with new hires and promotions, and as we go into the recognitions as well, if the people being recognized are in the room, please stand so we can acknowledge you. So we'll start with new hires. We'd like to welcome Laurel Clark, Chair of the Division of Consultation Liaison for Psychiatry, Glenda Roberts, Director of Clinical Research, LaShonda Thornton, County Care Behavioral Health Program Manager, and Anna Ortega, Manager of Respiratory Services. Welcome to all of you. And we want to recognize our team members who've earned promotions over the last month or so, starting with Christina Torino, Chief Plan Officer, Medicaid Services, Health Plan Services, Victoria Alagiosian Angelova, Chair of Department of Pathology, Shweta Gupta, Associate Chair of Division of Hematology Oncology, Ayodeji Batosho, Medical Director, Utilization Management and Physician Advisory Services, and Bijuman Kunju Kunju, Cardiology Technical Manager. Congratulations to all of you. We'll shift to recognitions. First, we want to share an update about our Express Care services. It's been live now for a few months. It is an online virtual platform where our patients can access urgent care needs. Kind of the non-emergent but pressing medical issues. They're open Monday through Friday, 11 A to 7 P, and can be accessed through the Express Care app, the CCH portal, and the CCH website. To date, there have been 1,100 visits through the portal. Excellent work there. We want to recognize Stroger Hospital for U.S. News and World Reports, where they earned recognition in for COPD treatment, heart failure, heart attack, kidney failure, and pneumonia. U.S. News and World Reports annual procedures and conditions ratings are designed to assist patients and their doctors in making informed decisions about where patients should receive care. Ratings are based on factors including patient outcomes, patient safety, nurse staffing, and more. The system was also recognized for the AHA Get With The Guidelines Awards for American Heart Association and American Stroke Association. We received Gold Plus recognition for heart failure, coronary artery disease for STEMI, as well as stroke, and then also had gold recognition for coronary artery disease and STEMI, and then also received Stroke Elite Honor Roll Elite Honor Roll for stroke, and Honor Roll for type 2 diabetes. So several of these recognitions are the highest the CCH has ever received, and we have several of our team members here. Well done.
Thank you.
We were also recognized at Stroger by the Lown Institute for Hospital Indices as the most inclusive hospital in Illinois and the number 10 most inclusive in the nation. The hospital was also recognized for number 1 in Illinois for avoiding overuse. The Loud Institute evaluates hospitals on over 50 metrics across categories for health equity, value of care, and patient outcomes. NACO, the National Association of Counties, had an achievement awards procedure where they ask for projects, and we had the most ever accepted at NACO. I believe our final count was 13 projects accepted, and they'll be coming through later this year to be presented. And regulatory update, I know we've talked about a few times. Stroger has completed their triennial survey through Joint Commission, and had very high recognitions, specifically in infection control, pharmacy, interventional radiology, and equity and inclusion. We also completed our National Healthcare Safety Network validation through IDPH, and the surveyor noted that the system's infection control protocols and implementation are among the best they've ever seen. Congratulations.
As they say, we've come a long way.
We also want to congratulate Julie Nowinski-Konchak for being recognized as the 2024 Health and Medicine Award winner. Dr. Nowinski-Konchak is a preventive medicine attending and MAT physician advisor, and was recognized for the 2024 award. She will be celebrated at a gala on September 12th. Congratulations. I don't know that she's with us, so, okay. We also want to recognize Octavia Rollins. Congratulations, Octavia. She's our Executive Director for Ambulatory Specialty Care Operations at Cook County Health, who is named Top 50 Women Leaders of Chicago in the 2024 list of women we admire. Congratulations, Octavia. Okay, we also, congratulations to Ratna Kanamuri, Associate Chief Strategy Officer, who was selected to the next cohort of America's Essential Hospitals Fellowship Program. For 30 years, AEH Fellows Initiative has been a highly sought-after leadership program dedicated to educating participants on issues that impact essential hospitals. Congratulations, Ratna. And at Stroger, we just want to share, we had a new celebration meals for new parents. Stroger is offering new parents with meals during their hospital stay. They can select a 3-course meal from a specially prepared menu of premium main dishes, sides, and desserts. We had a tasting event for staff to preview the meals. And this is a result of a collaboration between OBGYN administration and Morrison Dietary team. Thank you very much.
Well done.
And I will say there was some email back and forth after the tasting, and it was uniformly positive feedback, so thank you. That's good. And I think we'll come back to the strategic plan a bit later. So that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. And congratulations to all. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And welcome. The next item is public testimony. As a reminder, written testimony would not be read into the record, but will be included in the official record of this meeting and posted on the website. Madam Secretary, do we have any speakers who have registered to provide in-person or virtual oral testimony or submitted written testimony?
We did not receive any registrations nor any written testimony.
Oh, okay. Then, next on the agenda are the board and committee reports. The minutes of the June 28th board meeting are being presented for your approval. Are there any revisions or corrections to be made to the minutes that you received, directors? None? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 5A, the board meeting minutes of June 28th, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Next, Director Harrington will review the Audit and Compliance Committee meeting minutes. Director Harrington?
Thank you. The Audit and Compliance Committee, held a meeting on Friday, June 28th at 8:45 a.m. The next regular meeting of the Audit and Compliance Committee is scheduled on Friday, August the 2nd, 2024 at 10 a.m. This meeting was originally scheduled to be held on July 19th. The purpose of the meeting we had was solely for closed meeting review and discussion of reports relating to the audit of the FY 2023 Cook County Health financial statements and required communications with the external auditors. The review and discussion took place in closed meeting, and there were no action items presented for consideration at that meeting. Because it was held on the morning of the board meeting, most of the directors were present for the committee meeting. There is no need to review the closed meeting reports with the full board today, since the majority were present for the committee meeting. Therefore, the minutes of that meeting can be approved at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 5B, the June 28th Audit and Compliance Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? As you said, all directors are present, so, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Next, Director Ryder will review the Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on Thursday, July 18th at 2 p.m. The next meeting of the committee will be held on Thursday, August 15th at 9 a.m. The committee considered the following action items, which are included in the minutes. We conditionally approved 26 contracts and procurement items. Number 1, 13, 14, 20, and 21 are pending review by contract compliance. On the screen, you'll see the contractual requests from the Finance Committee whose fiscal impacts are greater than $1 million, which are highlighted for your information. We received and filed grant award-related items and received and filed transfer of fund items. The committee received the following reports, which are also included in the minutes. The fiscal 2024 second quarter report of contracts executed under the authority of the CEO, and report of the May 2024 financials. Following today's board meeting, we will be convening a special Finance Committee meeting scheduled for 11:30 a.m. to introduce the proposed Cook County Health fiscal year 2025 preliminary budget. All directors are welcome to attend and receive the presentation. Public hearings on the proposed preliminary budget will be held on Friday, August 2nd at 11 a.m. and Monday, August 5th at 6 p.m. All directors are also invited and welcome to attend those hearings. I would point out that for process purposes that, and I'll talk about this at the Special Finance Committee meeting, is that the intent of the meeting is it's the first opportunity for everyone to receive the preliminary budget. I would ask that folks hold questions for the briefings or the subsequent Finance Committee meeting. I think the intended process is to get the budget out into the atmosphere and then work our way through questions as the public has a chance to ask their questions and offer testimony. If there are no questions, Mr. Chairman, the minutes are being presented for the board's approval at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 5C, the July 18th Finance Committee meeting minutes, which contain the following action items: approval of the contracts and procurement items, and receiving and filing of the grant award related items, and transfer of funds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. None. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Mr. Chair. We do not have any contracts that are being presented directly to the board for consideration, so we can move to the next item, which will be presented by Dr. Claudia Fegan, Chief Medical Officer. Both this item and the following are typically considered by the Quality and Safety Committee, but they are being presented directly to the board for consideration, as we did not have a quality and patient safety committee meeting this month. Thank you.
Good morning, Directors. I'm Claudia Fegan, Chief Medical Officer for Cook County Health. And the item I have to present for you are the appointments of division chairs. Let me pull them all out. I have one initial appointment of Dr. Sean David Corman, who is being appointed to the medical staff and at the same time as the chair of the Division of Outpatient Psychiatry. Dr. Conan is a staff psychiatrist for Cook County Health, and he received his Doctor of Medicine from the University of Illinois. He has a bachelor's in biology as well as one in chemistry, and he has been with Cook County since 2018. He did his residency at University of Illinois, where he was the chief resident. Should I give you all, you would like them all at the time, right? Yeah, okay. And so I'm also presenting to you the reappointment of Dr. Joyce Miller as the chair of the Department of Psychiatry. Dr. Miller has been with Cook County Health since 2019. She initially served as a physician, psychiatrist at our CERMAC facility, and then received the interim appointment as chair of psychiatry. And so this reappointment is, we are reappointing chairs at the same time that their medical staff appointment lapses, so that both appointments can be done simultaneously. The next reappointment is Peter Algendi to the Department of Anesthesia. He is the chair of the Division of Anesthesia and Trauma, but he is also the program director for the anesthesia residency program. This is also the reappointment of Dr. Courtney Hollowell as the chair of the Division of Urology, and Dr. Thomas Messer, who is a trauma and burn surgeon, who is being reappointed to as the chair of the Division of Trauma Intensive Care. Those are all the appointments. I'll be happy to entertain any questions about these appointments or reappointments.
Do we have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 6B, the one Stroger Hospital Division Chair initial appointment, one Stroger Hospital Department Chair reappointment, and 3 Stroger Hospital Division Chair reappointments.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The item has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion or question? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the medical staff credentialing matters. They are being presented by Dr. Akintorin, Stroger EMS President, and Dr. Paul Allegretti, Provident MEC President. Or just shoot, Dr. Akintorin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I would like to present for your consideration the report of medical staff appointments, reappointments, and changes for the month of July.
Okay. Got it, yep. Anybody have any questions? So they're all recommended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Next.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And for our, from Med Exec at Mount Providence, the Credentials Committee recommended, attached, members be, reappointed and appointed.
Any questions? Comments? Board? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing none. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 6C, the whole list, the proposed Stroger Hospital and Providence Hospital medical staff, appointments, reappointments, and changes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. The ayes have it. Oh, I guess I call for the vote. I was like, okay. So assume positive. Assume positive. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There you go. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you. I was like, assuming you have no questions. Way to get it done. Next is a report from our interim CEO, Dr. Eric McKay.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I'm going to do just a high-level strategic initiatives update for July. We talked about a lot of this early on during the recognitions, but we'll call out a few things, and then I'm going to hand it off to Carrie and Angela to give a bit of an HR update. So just a few of the call-outs here that we didn't talk about. We've had community mural unveilings at Cermak and Cottage Grove, and have a few more planned in the next week or two. We have GIS, Global Imaging Specialists, now live and doing reads. The intent here is to help us work through backlog. We are working through a few kind of procedural kinks, but they are finally live and helping us work through the backlog, so we're very excited about that. We had a June 20th hiring fair that's resulted in 23 same-day offers, and 20 of those were accepted. And then coming soon, very excited, this is on the heels of the robots for surgery. We're moving forward with the Ion robot for assisted bronchoscopy as well, which will help us keep a lot more cases in-house, way fewer pneumothoraces and other complications, and helps us do kind of deeper biopsies that avoid any external, either kind of IR procedures or open procedures that allows us to do things less invasively. So we're very excited about that.
And when is that?
It is moving forward right now. We finalized the contract, so we're probably looking at 6-9 months before we're like live and working. So, okay, that's it. So I can hand it off to Carrie and Angela now for HR update.
Good morning, Carrie Pramick-Voke, Interim Chief Human Resource Officer.
Angela O'Banion, Chief Information Officer.
I'm going to start out with going through the normal HR metrics that we would normally present, then give us some HR updates including, and then hand it off to Angela to finish up with some HRIS updates for you. On this first slide, it is our normal metrics regarding how many positions we are working in HR based on the budgeted positions and where they are in process. So as you can see, this month, as of the end of June 30th, as at the end of June, on June 30th, we were at 1,824 vacancies, 1,448 of them being worked in HR, and then where each of those are is in the graph off to the right. Any questions?
What does it mean not being worked, the other 400?
I'm sorry, what was
The delta, can you tell us the delta, open vacancies being worked in HR, what's the delta?
Oh, yes, the ones that are not in HR. So, those that are not in HR would probably either be recent resignations, retirements that have not made their way into HR yet.
Okay.
Is a good number, as well as, when departments are doing a restructuring, they hold back a little bit too. Okay, next slide. So as of June 30th, we had filled a total of 675 positions through the recruitment process, and our offer acceptance ratio is at 67%, which is holding steady. Slight uptick from last couple of months, which is good, but nominal. As of the end of June, we have a net gain of positions, so accounting for attrition, 137 filled vacancies. Next slide. This is our separations report. Again, nothing really new here to report on, other than we are still trending very low on our resignations year over year over the last several years, which is really good for us. And our retirements are holding at a steady pace, so they have not done any major increases over the last couple of years, and actually slightly lower, which is good for us as well. This is a report based on the board's request to find out how our ARPA positions are faring in their recruitment processes. You will notice that when you compare to June's numbers, there's not a lot that changed in the filled positions, and that we're identifying filled positions as people who have already started working, gone through orientation here at the health system. But you'll see that in the vacant positions, there's been a significant decrease. We have moved many positions over to the corporate fund, so they're no longer being tracked as ARPA positions. And there are a number of positions in that 58 that are slated to start over the next couple of two orientation periods. So there's approximately 10 or so positions that we have offers accepted. They're going through onboarding currently.
Excuse me, when
Sure.
they're moved from this designation to the corporate, as you said, does
Yes.
that still mean that those positions are yet filled?
So they are, some of them, actually all of those are still vacant, and those ended up on that first slide in the vacant positions being worked in HR, which we're counting on the corporate budget.
Okay. So we do have a way to track
Yes.
and account for those positions as well? Okay, they don't fall off.
They don't fall off, they're just in a different bucket.
Thank you.
Is the ARPA funds as a pool of money, is it gonna last so long? I mean, is there a sunset or?
Yes, sir, there is.
Yes,
Right.
2026.
Right, but there's a sunset when it has to be, allocated, right?
Right.
Which is coming up.
Fall of this year. So the fall of this, that's something I told us, fall of this year.
Okay.
Right, and I believe in the last, board meeting, we had significant questions surrounding that as to how we're tracking and how we're gonna know that we're gonna hit that. Because if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Curry, but I don't know if we received the information that gave us the confidence that we were gonna achieve that objective by that deadline. And it is, today is what, July 26th, we're creeping closer. So that's where we want some really, good information, because that's a major concern.
My question was, as long as, Terry is still expressing confidence that we're on track to meet those obligations, that's sufficient and at the appropriate time, if there are numbers we can look at. But do you still have the same level of confidence that we had a month ago in terms of filling these obligations?
I believe we are. We didn't do the breakout for this meeting, but in the HR committee meeting in August, we're gonna have a more specific breakout of where those positions are in process. And you'll see that they are, a majority of them are either interviewing or selection process, so we are still confident we're gonna hit our numbers.
Okay, so if we wait till August to do it, and if I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe September is that deadline for the allocation?
It is, but it's somewhat of an artificial deadline as well. So we have to spend the money by the end of this fiscal year for getting those vacancies filled. And then, but we worked out with the county that we were going, our goal was to get them filled by September to give us that leeway on if there were some complications that might arise.
So we worked in that buffer with the county.
Correct.
So that if we're not finalizing and we're not in a good place, we can repurpose and kind of shift those funds so we're not at risk.
Okay, okay,
Exactly.
I'm good.
This is a broader, budget.
Is what you-
Yeah,
Right.
All positions that were created during the pandemic, we have to verify. The county and the hospital have done a good job of tracking how the plan, we can all have to, you have to figure out what programs and what lines you're gonna continue doing, and you can, the ARPA money, money to build all of your budget. And I think with the amount of vacant positions we have, being able to transition some of this into permanent lines is probably, a lot easier than what you would think, 'cause you're not actually hiring and cutting people, you're repurposing positions as you go into that transition.
We're actually doing the exercise now over the next month or two of, you know, which positions are we gonna be able to transfer into the hospital fund at the end of '26, kind of that transition plan for longevity, right? I mean, you know, food is medicine, those types of things, those are behavioral health, those aren't things that we're gonna be stepping away from, right? We've committed as a system to doing those things, so what's that look like after '26 once ARPA is over?
So in that way, we don't lose monies for those fundings or lose those positions that are certainly needed. Okay.
There are bodies that have used ARPA funds to go directly into their core operating budget without a plan of how to, as additive without transition, that becomes a problem. So I don't believe we have that problem here. There's been a pretty good handle on that issue. Yeah, so.
So if I heard correctly, Carrie, there'll be a fuller, presentation with information at the next HR committee meeting, 2 or 3 weeks from now. We'll know
Correct.
more. Thank you.
Okay, so, any questions on the metrics, other questions on the metrics before we go into the optimization slide? Okay, so the next slide, we are very closely tracking our nursing hiring and velocity and attrition, and so, at a previous request of the board, we decided to dive in and not just give the accelerated hiring process information, which is on the next slide, but also take a global look at nursing and where it's at. So, the top row of numbers tells you the specific data around fiscal year 2024. What is really exciting to me are the two numbers on the far right, the 118 separations, which if you see compared to FY '23 at the same time and date, for 2023 matters, we are lower, and that is the trend we wanted to achieve by doing the retention of the nurses. And we are continuing that trajectory month over month. Our preliminary numbers for July are showing us on that same trajectory.
What do you attribute that to, that change?
A couple of changes, both programmatically for nursing and their onboarding and continuous onboarding efforts, as well as tweaking their competency trainings and how they're evaluating those, but then also the new programming with HR for the different types of nursing recruitment and retention and onboarding through the HR processes as well. But nursing has done a lot of focus efforts on their training program and their onboarding program for the nurses, and so we're not losing as many of the new nurses like we had been.
And how did you gather that information?
Nursing is very closely tracking that, and HR is tracking many of those metrics with them as well.
Very good.
For new hires, when you look at the net new, meaning we're taking attrition into account, we are 20 paces higher than we were in FY '23, and so we consider that a very big win for this year, considering we are still in a very challenging recruitment environment when it comes to all of healthcare, but particularly nursing positions. And those graphs at the bottom show that, you know, we've got our yearly hires and separations, so that attrition rate is shown graphically, and as you can see, we are maintaining more of them, so the decrease of our nurses through attrition is slowing. Our turnover rate this year, it's not listed on the form, is 6.6% so far, which is it's 6.5 percentage points lower than it was in 2023 alone, which was at 13%. And then our head count, as you can see, we're making those dents. In 2023, we had 1,618 positions with that 13% attrition rate. And then right now we're at 1,813 nursing positions, and that's accounting for all of nursing positions, leadership and non-leadership. Excuse me. The next slide shows specifically our accelerated nursing hiring program, which was a new program we started last August. The final pilot timeframe ends this coming August, so we are excited to see what a full year in review will look like later this year. The acceptance rate is at 59% with a declination rate of offers, through this process at, 41%. We'll be taking a deeper dive into those in the HR committee meeting in August, as well as to the types of reasons people are declining. But as I had mentioned a couple of sessions ago, many of those declines are coming from people who've applied to multiple positions, so they are coming in, but they can only accept one of the multiple positions we have offered to them. So that gets accounted for in the data, and we're diving in deeper for the HR committee meeting to try to feed those out.
So, okay, it sounds as if you said that the acceptance rate, you have one person that gets 3 offers from within our organization.
Mhm.
So those other 2 that they say no to, that's being counted in there?
It is. The system itself doesn't have a way of accounting that for it, but we are taking a deeper dive. Yeah,
Because I was like, that's bad math, but okay.
it kind of is, yes.
Because I was going to ask you, I said, hey, I think we're going down on this acceptance rate before we were up higher, but okay, now, there's a lot of noise in there, okay.
Yes. Yes, there is. Okay, so yes, year to date, we have made 610 offers through this process, and over half of them have been accepted. And a majority of them have already started. Although we do have orientation dates going out so far through September for people transitioning into the organization, a majority of those individuals who have accepted have started with the organization.
Do you have any additional programs or ideas in place for what you'll be doing to gear up toward the fall, which when we normally see potentially increases in agency nursing utilization, so that can address some of the increased costs of agency nurses, and sadly what might propel folks that have a full-time position to move toward agency nursing, so much more lucrative for them?
So the team is looking at a few options and doing the research on that right now. We recently hired a new Associate Chief of Human Resources, overall of talent management, so talent acquisition falls within his bucket, and as a fresh set of eyes, he's working with the team on some other newer ideas that we're hoping will be able to start the process of implementing come fall and winter of this year.
When do you feel you'll be able to bring that information back to the board so we can have some information?
We won't be ready by the HR committee in August, but definitely by November.
I'm sorry, that's a great comment. Do we have any idea as to how many people we lose to agencies?
No, we don't. The simple answer is no, and it's a complicated reason as to why, but people don't always share with us with why they're leaving the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a basic question. For a system our size, and looking at our system specifically, how many nurses do we need and how many nurses do we have? This is the basic question.
That is a question I would prefer to defer to Dr. Gina Peters, whom I believe stepped out.
Okay.
But we will get you that answer and give you guys an update later.
I would say that I believe that this was a question that was asked during collective bargaining last time, and they came up with a threshold of what coverage would look like. And there were staffing goals or requirements that were built out in the last negotiation, from what I understand.
Yes, and unfortunately, because our census fluctuates and there's no hard and fast formula that can always be attributed, there are other factors, acuity, that have to be taken into account. That number does change. And so from last bargaining, which was at the very, in the middle of the early stages of COVID, from now, I'm sure those numbers are very different, which is why I'd prefer Bina be able to answer those for us.
And there are many different ways to count what is required, from a statute to a regulatory, which is kind of a bottom, a desired amount, and then what I call a realistic fluctuation based on these changes that happen over a given time.
I think when they were in negotiations, they were basing a lot of those numbers off of what the statutory.
The minimum statute requirements, yeah.
At the time, we weren't using that, so.
I just have a quick question about your comment on, we're in the sort of challenging recruitment environment in terms of nursing. So I'm just curious what those are, and also compared to all the different hospitals around, Cook County, like, what's the right
of our retention, and recruitment compared to, let's say, Rush or UAC?
So those organizations don't have to publicly report those numbers. We go against the national benchmarking, which many of those hospitals participate in, and so their numbers are in the blind data that we get, but it's not going to be specifically telling us per hospital, and they're as non-public institutions, they don't have to report those publicly as we do. So it's hard to compare specifically us versus Rush, us versus Loyola, us versus Northwestern. However, we are well below the national benchmark, which is at around a 23% attrition rate, and we are right now at a 6.6% for nursing specifically. So we are doing really well when we compare ourselves to the benchmark.
Here's a question. I think maybe at the last session, we talked about as the pandemic phase is changing, because it hasn't ended. Are we seeing fewer people leave to go to agencies? Are we depending less on agencies?
I don't know that I can answer that we're seeing fewer people leave to agencies, just because, like I said, they are not required to identify that why they're leaving, and most do not. However, our dependency on agency is a difficult question to answer around here because of different programming, like the new new arrival programs, things like that, that require us to do a bolus with agency because it's not a permanent program. And so I believe Bina Peters would have a better feel for how we are faring with that decrease at the moment.
I would say intuitively, yes. I think fewer are leaving. The rates have decreased significantly, even the rates that we're paying. So, you know, by just kind of cascade, nurses aren't getting the crazy rates that they were getting early on during COVID. So I think I would suspect there's probably fewer nurses leaving for agency. And then, yeah, Carrie, thank you for bringing up the kind of where we're using agency. A lot of the new arrival work has really been focused there just because of the ability to kind of bring people in quickly. Right. So, but that's baked into the total number of agencies. So when we're reporting percentages and all of that, that's a big piece of it is, you know, kind of those acute needs.
And I guess the point I'm making is the belief is that it's there, and it would be good to be able to have those numbers, because I think there's some other folks that would be very interested in that have expressed concerns, and to be able to demonstrate that change is occurring, it would actually reflect very well on the organization as a whole. From 2 points, basically, you were reducing our costs. Secondly, you did hear the concerns that were expressed by others, and you can demonstrate that we have now actually started to gain.
Okay, next, any,
First, just a second, while we have it, I'd like to acknowledge the president. Director Vice President.
okay, next slide.
Thank you.
You had a question.
Yeah, well, just building does the department, at this point, I think, there's an interesting opportunity for others to hear from the voice of those that are hired and have had a good experience, and what stories they can tell, as part of the recruitment, collateral and recruitment process, in terms of some of the things that my colleague Director Robinson was mentioning. And then the other question is, are we using, and this is not specific to this specific issue, but generative AI in the context of HR to open up space and time to, you know, for the team to focus on various issues. There are use cases around performance management. There are use cases around, you know, putting job descriptions in language that resonates with different levels or audiences, in different ways to just try to make the job easier, so you can open up time for the things that, you know, the team needs to focus on.
Yeah, and Angela's team, yeah, she'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the HRIS, which are the last couple of slides in this deck. But we are working with the HIS team on those exciting new areas that could help us streamline and make us more efficient. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so the hiring fair successes, our update, we've held 15 hiring fairs as of the end of June, and our end of June hiring fair was pretty successful. We had almost 100 people in attendance, and for an early summer month, right before a holiday weekend, that was a really good turnout. And we had 95% of the offers extended that day that were accepted, and within a day or two of the hiring fair. So by that first couple of days post-hiring fair, we had about 95% of the offers we extended accepted, and they've begun their onboarding processes.
I'm sorry, what job area was this in? Because these are great numbers.
The particular June hiring fair was for nursing and pharmacy areas. So we had multiple nursing positions, including surgical tech. We also had a couple of social worker positions in that hiring fair as well. We were not as successful in filling all of those as we had hoped, but we will be trying again with them.
Oh, okay, the reason why I asked the question, because to be able to get these type of numbers, there's something special happening. And the question becomes, what, so that you can duplicate it, because very few people can get these kind of numbers.
We believe that the acceptance rate at the hiring fair during that process and the fact that we're not getting as many declines is because they are immediate same-day offers. And we're getting, and even for the occasional, we have a few that maybe we have to delay an offer or two because of some compliance reason that has to be double-checked. We're getting those offers out to the candidates within a couple of days, as opposed to through the normal hiring process, which can take weeks, if not a month or so.
So let me ask the maybe not so smart question, but if this is so successful, can we replicate it? Can we do it more often?
I'm not sure that doing them more often, we are trying to figure out ways to put more positions into those hiring fairs. So we have a lot of regulatory, requirements around our hiring processes, and so when we are clearing those positions to make it to the hiring fair, we utilize the hiring fair process, we're getting good return, absolutely. So we are trying to identify faster ways to get more positions into the hiring fair process.
Okay, because, Director Curry, I think we talked about this a few sessions ago, the big hole that we're in, and I think, Director Ryder mentioned the idea of, it's been big for a long time and we were negative, now we're starting to get traction. But at this type of rate, this is where we can really make ground. And I'm excited about this because we just don't get this opportunity nowhere. You actually get a chance to really do this type of work. And so I'm strongly encouraging that we can do something.
For the record, I support his excitement.
As do we. The only other thing I want to point out is, I wanted to translate this, and although I didn't have it put on the slide, we have 77 hires that are shown at the bottom through the hiring fair process, which is, year to date from 2023 is higher. However, that 77 hires is filling 71 vacancies. So we must have had to repurpose a couple of those vacancies at some point during the process. But I think that does speak to that making the dent in the overall vacancy rate that, in a half a year, through this process alone, we've been able to make that dent by 71 positions. Okay. Next slide. So some of the process improvement work we've been doing is centered around, a lot of our process improvement is centered around the hiring processes, but I wanted to highlight one specifically for you guys to give you an idea of what we are working with our quality team on for our process improvement work. And so we've got a lot of information on this slide, the methodology that our quality team worked with our talent acquisition leadership to dive into what we should focus on next. So they did some current state mapping. They did voice of the customer surveys with our hiring managers to find out what they think and what their ideas are. They did a multidisciplinary improvement session with hiring departments as well as with HR together, all in the same room, and there were many of those sessions together. And then they were working on identifying the root causes of our time to fill. So time to fill has been our main focus for this work, and some of the opportunities that were identified, and I kept the technology pieces off of this because we are working currently with Cook County, or as Angela's going to talk about how we're interconnected with Cook County Bureau of Technology, they are already working on a lot of the technology solutions that came out through these sessions, and so we'll talk a little bit more robustly about that once Bureau of Technology is ready for us to release that information, which at this moment, we're not ready. But, the other things that were non-technology driven were enhancing the communications with the new hires by creating an FAQ for them to take away during the application process and not waiting until the interview process, so that they're coming in a little bit more forearmed on what benefits, what processes look like, so they're not as surprised throughout the process, which their comfort level will help attribute to better time and turnaround times for us as well. Earlier communication between the hiring manager and the candidate once they've accepted the offer. So usually, and historically, we have put them through our HR onboarding process, and they're going hand in hand with their recruiter and their recruiting assistant, but they haven't had that better connection with management yet. And we're getting from both management and the applicants that they would like more of that. So we're working on improving that as a targeted focus for this fall. And then eliminating variances in the recruitment process. We've brought on a lot of contracted staff, along with hiring a lot, thankfully, new employed staff in our recruitment team as well. And so now it's creating more efficient standardization so that every person, every touch point is getting the same type of best quality experience.
The photo is of the process improvement team, or I was wondering who's in this photo.
In the photo, so this was one of those multidisciplinary days. So yes, there's members of the quality team, our employment plan office, HR, and some of our user departments that are captured in this photo.
They're folding up, like rice that they cut out and give it very vague directions, and everybody kind of tries to follow to the best of their ability, and then they hold up and they see how everybody's outcome was different. So it's kind of an exercise in visualizing what happens when you have kind of non-standard scope or, work plan, standard operating procedures. So.
Exactly. And we have been getting a lot of good feedback from the departments that they either participated in the survey or these multidisciplinary sessions about feeling more connected to the work that's going into the HR improvement. So we're getting a lot of good feedback. Our next steps are to develop communication materials and structures for those new hire engagements. We're developing and sharing standard work for the recruiters as well as hiring managers. So, HR has their standard operating procedures, those that are utilized within HR, and now we're creating standard operating procedures that account for management being interwoven into the process. We actually just recently updated a hiring guide for managers with all of our new technology pieces that will be distributed to them in the coming week or two, because it was early August, is going to be the release date. And we are anticipating that is going to help us with the time to fill, just because there won't be so much anxiety around some of the process changes that have been occurring over the last year and a half through our optimization efforts. And then finally, scheduling training sessions on all of these new optimizations. We obviously did training initially when we pushed out the new processes or when we pushed out any new technology. And now we're at that point where we're ready to start retraining and reintroducing to make sure that it's taking hold and that it's working with the management team that has to push out these endeavors. Okay, next slide. Another non-recruitment related, tangentially recruitment related, let's say that, but a non-talent acquisition team process that we go through is our nurse tuition reimbursement process, which is mostly, it's share ownership between us, our finance department, and the comptroller's office for Cook County. And so I've got the breakout on the far left of what the big picture overview of that process looks like. The blue column is what happens initially. An applicant or an employee will initiate that they want to have a tuition reimbursement, and it's an automated process now. We did some process development and created a link, an HR service link, where they will now take it through an electronic process instead of the manual process we had before this January. Then once the request is submitted, it's a 1 to 2 day turnaround where they will get immediate feedback on whether their request meets the requirements and will be approved or has been denied. And if it's denied, they're told why in case they can resubmit with corrections. And then the employee will then pay upfront for their tuition. It moves into, once they've completed completed their programming and they have grades, they now will update their request with the submission of their receipts for their payment as well as their grades. And if it meets the criteria to pay reimbursement, in a 1 to 2 day turnaround time, they are notified of that, as well as we then push that information to our finance department who processes it. They process it within the same pay period, and then within that same pay period, it is sent over to the comptroller's office, and it takes them once in a great while, 3 pay periods to pay out a reimbursement, depending on how many reimbursements they're getting at one time. And so that is the standard process. The numbers for FY '24 are at the top, where we've had 246 tuition reimbursement requests come through already. As of today, all of those 19 in the bucket that says reimbursements are in process, all of them have been processed and even paid out. So they are, so now instead of 137 reimbursements, we have 156 reimbursements through that 246. The others are still waiting for program completion to occur.
Julia's question, it's probably not an exceptionally high number, 10% are denied, and I'm sure that's for lack of information, other reasons. Is there anything within that 10% that stands out as to why a person denied? Because this is after they've completed work and now they've submitted a TR and there's a rejection.
I do not have that information with me, I don't want to guess. So, but I can come back to you, because you're right, we do
Just
have
look,
that
see if there's
information.
anything that, maybe an effort to fix that. I mean, one is probably too much to me. If a person has completed the coursework, there's an expectation. But again, if they're not providing the work or not meeting the grade level, I understand that.
I was gonna say, some have to do with the grade level, but then there are also, it has to, programs sometimes shift.
Oh,
And so if it no longer hits the criteria that's required,
that's,
it also will fall off.
uncover here. Thank you.
So these are people already, like, currently in the program, some kind of program?
Yes, yes, so there are people who have either are starting a new education program that they need tuition reimbursement for, or they are in the midst of it now eligible for. So a new nurse is not eligible for tuition reimbursement the first year of hire. They have to wait until they've been here for a year. So they may already be in a program.
So it doesn't have to be nursing-related program?
It does. It does need to be a nursing-related program, and this is, the nurse tuition reimbursement is specific to our NNOC nurses.
And since there is the ability to resubmit with corrections, as I heard you say, it will be very helpful to actually have that, because unfortunately, there's a potential percentage of those denied. If we don't move those forward to reimbursements, we don't want those to be potential reasons that then may move to attrition. So being able to have that, and, or even what's supported, is it a lack of clarity of what is required, the shifts that you may have mentioned, and how those shifts unfortunately might address some departments in nursing more differently than others, and we don't want to actually have inequities there accidentally.
Well, we actually are diving into right now, looking at how the highest utilizers, and if there is any discrepancies or disparities between the different departments and who's utilizing. Stroger, as expected, is one of the biggest utilizers because they have the biggest number of nurses. However, CERMAC is actually second, even though they're not as big as some of the other areas. They definitely are a high user as well. But what you just said triggered for me a large reason, and I'll get the exact number, but a large reason that these are denied are timing. So there are very strict timing requirements of when you need to submit your request. And if you don't hit the deadlines on the dates, we cannot process them. Yes.
Okay, I want to address the shift question. Okay, I'm assuming that a shift means that a person enters a program and something happens to that program that it is no longer acceptable? Is that what we mean by shift?
A couple of things. That is one of them, yes. So sometimes a program will fall out of having their accreditation, and then they have to be going to an accredited program in order to get tuition reimbursement. That is not very common. It is one of the reasons. Another shift may be the shifting in the school's programming itself may have changed, and some courses may no longer be eligible where others are. So it may not be the full tuition reimbursement is denied, but maybe a specific course may no longer be eligible based on the school's program.
So if that does happen, then it seems it would be possibly a good thing to create a list of schools that you've had very good success with. And not to tell anyone what to do, but say, these schools are the schools that we have not seen any problems with shifting. Because I'm just thinking, if I was a person who invested my time and money, and then all of a sudden the school changed and I didn't get reimbursed, I would not be a happy camper from a variety of standpoints. And so if we can facilitate that, the military's done it for years. They'll tell people where to go and not to go because they've seen bad things happen. So this is just looking out for our people, if we can do it.
We'll look into whether we can do that.
And I'm gonna step back because I don't wanna get in the weeds with you, but just taking that a little further, I probably feel strongly, I'd like to hold our employees harmless on that. If they run into one of these unscrupulous programs and shift occurs, and accreditation even, a full review and some consideration given if there's an opportunity, because in good faith, the person completes the coursework, they've done everything that they are able to control, and the shift occurs by the time they apply for reimbursement. I think there should be some type of consideration, and maybe there is now, but I wouldn't just summarily.
I don't disagree, and as I've only been in the HR department here for the last 4 years, I've actually never seen that be the rejection reason. I know historically there has been some of those rejection reasons, but in the last 4 years I've been in HR, I have not seen something like that happen. But it is one of those things that we would take an extra review for, absolutely.
And so then are the shifts occurring on our part where what was something that was an eligible course is now no longer deemed such? So I know you mentioned that
No,
there were
we
a
usually
number of
don't make
different-
those determinations.
Okay.
The collective bargaining agreement language is pretty broad. As long as it's geared towards a nursing program, we would pay it.
Right, and because unfortunately, the inequities in those, in persons who enroll in some programs that may sometimes lose their accreditation or other, unfortunately also negatively steeps towards those who may be underserved. So we want to make sure we're giving the maximum benefit to those who are enrolling in programs to be able to get them through.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to raise is the hidden cost of, the impact of those that are denied, both on attrition and around brand and voice. You know, what they might say to others that you're trying to recruit. So just even for folks where timing was an issue, you know, you may already be doing this, having the conversation with them about that, or you just, that 28 may seem like a small number and 10% is actually big, but that has a compounding effect.
Absolutely.
And again, if you are able to understand and just put out, this is where we had a good, all of this is avoided. Because now the person who decides to go to school or further education, they can make an informed decision. And oftentimes, that's one of the reasons they don't have the resources to do it. And because we want our people to be educated properly and accredited properly, we can say where good success has been. And that maybe we'll take it up with council to make sure we're able to do it. But this only makes good business sense.
Well, and anecdotally, my team does spend a lot of time individually meeting with employees who are seeking to utilize this program to walk them through it and to help them through it. So we do have a lot of meetings with the employees about this process, especially if they're new to the organization and have never participated before.
Exactly, as well as encouragement to continue in the program, because apparently there is a timeline and specified times by which they have to complete the program. But they're also working full-time, which is an additional burden. So the encouragement that can help those that are enrolled in a program, the attaboys, in helping them to get across the finish line. Otherwise, they end up completing the degree, but it's now fallen outside of the timeline that was required for this reimbursement, and then you have another decline.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets interesting, because this could seem like, okay, everyone's fully an adult here. But if the objective of this program is to be something good for the organization, then it may make sense to have a program so that it makes it very difficult for someone to fall out of alignment with the timeline and the dates. You may already have it, I don't know, but I'm just trying to find a way to make the nurses and whoever else want to be here, because we have a great program that actually contributes to their personal growth.
I totally agree with Dr. Robinson. I was going to mention if the nursing department actually have programs or credentials that they need, for nurses to actually think about promotion. So, if you can actually provide, these are the things that we need for our organization, any of you want to go ahead and get, credentials and learning, you have opportunity to go up, I think tuition reimbursement is great incentive, but, thinking about more organizationally, what sort of training and credential we need to strengthen the organization, but also individual sort of promotion.
A structured program.
We are working with the nursing team on better identifying pathways for learning for those individuals, absolutely. So nursing has been doing a lot of that work already, and now they've joined with HR, and we are working through making them the pathways more visible to the staff.
Director Garza, perhaps this could be something we take up in the HR committee, when we take a deep dive into with Dr. Peterson's available.
All right, well, with that concludes my part of the report, but I am going to hand this over to our CIO, Angela O'Banion, to take us through the next several slides on our HRIS technology.
Purpose of this overview is to answer a question that was posed in a prior meeting, which is, are our HR, payroll, finance systems integrated? And the answer is they absolutely are. All Cook County employees log into the exact same system, depending on their role as an employee. All employees use the same system. The finance teams across the county use the same system, HR. So the Cook County Oracle Enterprise Resource Planning Solution is referred to internally as STEP. It was a strategic implementation that was led by the Bureau of Technology. It wrapped up primarily the bulk, I'll call it the 90+% in 2018 or so. If you include the procurement processing, it probably started around 2013 or so. But it includes all the HR solutions, payroll, inventory management, and you will purposely not see the word CCH on any of these slides because it's not our system. It is the county-wide system. Prior to the implementation of this program, there were 8+ separate full enterprise planning solutions across various offices under the president, from the sheriff to the judge. So you can imagine an undertaking of integrating all systems in the county. And you can also imagine that every entity didn't get exactly what they wanted. And so slides like HR process improvements, some of the work you've seen before in HR and trying to put in recommendations that they need. Because over time, as you use a system designed for everyone, as departments, you're going to understand that there are nuances associated with your workforce that couldn't possibly have been accounted for when the solution was rolled out for everyone. Because the purpose was to make a solution that worked for the overwhelming majority of people. So that's what this program is called, and it was a strategic, tactical implementation for the county. The next slide shows principally the human resources component of that, which is the concept of a human resource management model is really around something called assignment. And that assignment is, what's your job code? How much money do you make? What's your compensation strategy? Where do you work? And that is, we'll loosely refer to that as human capital management. And there are a lot of structures and technologies, as you'll see on the next page, that are required to make the entire solution work. And the next page is a little complicated, but I want you to see, it's very hard, but you can see it in your packet, that this human capital management solution includes information from the finance system, a core HR system. It includes the Cook County time system. It includes the Taleo system. most of what you see in this, illustration is Oracle, implemented by IBM. IBM implements as many Oracle solutions as Oracle itself does. So this diagram shows that there may be just different systems, but they're all connected. And this diagram has a small number of tweaks. For example, certain parts of the box around self-service HR are not implemented broadly. Some of the, even within Cook County Health, which I'll speak to in a second, even in Cook County Health, different leaders have different ways of doing a performance appraisal. So, but all to say that there are many systems inside the HR solution, and there's a page for this for procurement, finance, inventory management, that are all part of the Oracle ERP solution. So the purpose is just to simply say, yes, everything is integrated. And when we were talking about this in the last meeting, we were talking about the fact that there were some manual items that needed to be added for things like the retroactive increase. Just because something is manual or manual exceptions are allowed doesn't mean that they're not integrated. So that little A is for those who are familiar with process flows. I know we have a few engineers and technologists on the board. That little A tells you that the next slide will talk a little bit about payroll. And payroll has the opportunity in this big business flow for you to see that there are manual entries that come into the payroll system. The majority come in through the HR system, but just because they're manual doesn't mean that eventually they don't get interfaced either through an Excel upload or going to a system such that they can be incorporated into the whole process. So that was pretty much the purpose of the discussion. I think I was sitting right there when Director Robinson said, Angela, are these systems integrated? And I said, they absolutely are 100% integrated. It is just that sometimes, like when Dr. Makaitis signs something where I forgot to swipe in the other day, or I won't get paid, there's a manual process to allow for exceptions, to allow for mistakes and deviations, but it does not mean that those manual processes don't get integrated. And I don't have a slide on it, but every 2 to 3 years, and we're due for one, there's a more robust technology update on where we are with some of the systems that you've approved over time, whether it's our Oracle implementation or one that you'll see soon around our staff aug, and we're due for one of those. So we'll coordinate with the board when we'll have a state of the union for IT. One of the questions that Director Bott asked is around artificial intelligence and HR. Carrie and I have been working with and talking to our counterparts in the Bureau of Technology about upgrading our human capital management solution to take advantage of things that are going to become more common, such as when you're an employee, instead of logging into a system and going to a screen to change your number of whatever those things are called, your deductions or how many dependents you have, you can actually use ChatGPT to just say, please reduce my number of allowances from 10 to 5. And the system, the artificial intelligence, will go into those systems and do everything. It'll say your changes have been made, or we are unable to make these changes because of the following reasons. And so there are a lot of different types of artificial intelligence tools that you can use, such as also recommending to an employee whether or not their current profile allows them to apply for a job. But before you do that, AI requires a high level of computing. We all use, many of us use, ChatGPT instead of Google, but it takes 1,500 to 2,000 times more energy to create that co-pilot ChatGPT, or it creates 30 times computing power. So these systems and the intelligence in them require your own internal systems to have high computing power, and it requires extreme access to data. So your data needs to be uniform across various positions, your data needs to be accessible, et cetera. So we do know that in the next 2 years, solutions like Oracle are doing a great deal to do generative AI. We are in conversations with our current partner, Oracle, on their human capital management solution, the next generation of that. The county has migrated already to OCI, which is an Oracle cloud platform that allows the better use of data. We are embarking on that ourselves within Cook County Health, because there's just some underlying fundamental technologies that need to be in place before you can actually take advantage fully of AI.
So I like, so in some cases, yes, but I challenge that a little bit, because in Copilot on the Office, I use it every day for summarizing notes, for building slides, for doing Excel. I mean, and it saves a ton of time, and my team uses it for all sorts of reasons. And it's a function of Microsoft Office that is relatively easy to use called Copilot.
We use,
Yeah, so I don't know if that, so I'm just saying that
we use
there's
it a
variations.
lot
Yeah.
in the organization. We're talking about specifically HR. So
Got it.
we use it absolutely for assistance with, it's embedded in Microsoft. There are about 15 or so functions that are embedded in Microsoft that our employees use all the time. We only use systems that are internal, but we're talking about the HR AI things that are available within Oracle. Those we are not using as broadly. But absolutely, we'll talk, and when we talk about that technology session, we'll talk about the 100 different areas that we're already using artificial intelligence in the hospital, because every tool that we use already uses it, from Adobe to Microsoft. The way our code is developed with Oracle, we have a policy on AI. We have 3 or 4 pilots in various medical divisions that are using AI. So we're just specifically talking about, some of the human resources needs.
So there's a plan to think through governance, data modernization?
Yes, we have 2 AI governance committees. We have one at the county level. We have 2 within Cook County Health, one that is more about data governance, and we also have one that is a subcommittee. It is specifically designed for medical staff. The first thing we did was a policy, which is being used by the county as a model. Governance is the most pressing priority. We have an AI draft strategy that includes, for every one of the offices under the CEO, the most common uses of AI and what we can do faster versus later. And we're socializing that with the various departments. So yes, we have a governance policies, governance committees, and a draft strategy.
Thank you.
Could I ask questions that's related? I think the silence speaks for itself. I'm just asking, were any of our systems impacted by the Microsoft update meltdown that occurred last week?
Not materially. So when I awakened to all these texts that said that Microsoft was having a global outage, I said to myself, that's impossible, because you wouldn't be able to send me an email. I would have awakened, taken my mask off, and my life would have had a blue screen in front of it, because there is nothing that does not work without Microsoft. What happened is a CrowdStrike, which is a cybersecurity company used by 300 of the Fortune 500. CrowdStrike made an upgrade, and any customer that was also a Microsoft user was impacted. So it was a Microsoft global outage for people who use CrowdStrike, which is not a solution that we use.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
And there were a few, you asked the question, there were a few impacts to our system, but we have primary vendors. Some of their vendors used CrowdStrike, but it was extraordinarily limited impact to any of our systems and patient care.
So what are we doing to get the data in the right format? Because that sounds like that's a huge hurdle, because it's a Herculean task to do that. So do we have a plan?
We do, there's so many things that we're doing with our HR partners. There's a road to the final AI state. So for example, our HR team used to manually do job description updates into new templates. Now we're using some forms of artificial tools and optical character reading to upload new JDs. And there's a lot of things that are on the road to AI. They aren't quite AI. You can't quite say, please change this job description to the new template, and it just does it, right? Because a huge part of AI is natural language commands. And so we aren't quite there, but yes, we are doing things. And when we're talking about data, we're not talking about employee records. We're talking about other data, such as data in a job description. I can't log in, for example, to my employee benefit solution and see my job description. I know what my job is, but I can't see the 2 pages. I go somewhere else for that. And so part of the process, before you can make my job description available to me in the Oracle solution, is to have a standardized format for that job description. So those are some of the examples. So we definitely are not talking about the core data of employee records. We're talking about some of the things that feed into that job description, performance evaluations, et cetera.
All right. Well, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Angela. That concludes the report.
Thank you very much. The next item is the review of the quarterly report from CCH. Introduction by Dr. Lamar Hasbrook, and review by Dr. Kieran Joshi and Lori Katich, followed by review of the Managed Care Committee metrics by Aaron Delena, Chief Administrative Officer for Health Plan Services. Director, I'll remind you that we have another special finance meeting after this at 11:30 for the budget.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I'm just going to introduce someone you already know, Dr. Kieran Joshi, and our colleague is going to come up, Lori Katich, who leads our Emergency Preparedness and Response Unit. As you all know, we're responsible for quarterly reports for the Board of Commissioners, so this will be kind of a preview of the upcoming report. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hasbrook. Kieran Joshi, Senior Medical Officer, Cook County Department of Public Health. So happy and excited to be with you all this morning. Just by way of providing some framing comments here. Today, what we normally do when we come here to this body to present out is we'll talk about a program or two and sort of success stories. So you are going to hear some of that today, and you're also going to hear about how we're strategically trying to position ourselves to prepare for the next major public health threat, whether it be an outbreak, God forbid a pandemic, or anything in between. We want to be ready. And as someone who lived through the pandemic, one of my mantras is really never again. I take that really seriously and have worked very hard under Dr. Hasbrook's leadership and with my colleague here, Ms. Katich, to really integrate the lessons learned from the pandemic into our operations. We do have quite a bit of ways to go, but I'm confident, given where we are now, that we're on the right trajectory. So with that, I want to start, the first half of our presentation is going to relate to a community immunization program. This is a new program that I've been spending a lot of time working to build out. The second half will be Ms. Kadich presenting about the Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Unit, which she is currently leading. So one might ask the question, why do we need an immunization program? I would hope that at this point, the answer to that question is self-evident. If you need a reminder, other than COVID, we recently just had a massive measles outbreak in the city of Chicago. Had major efforts to sort of have the colleagues at the Chicago Department of Public Health scale up operations and address that. That was a significant investment in time and effort. And so just wanted to highlight that while, of course, the pandemic is sort of, we're still seeing some sort of embers there of the pandemic with respect to COVID, we do see a continuation of the infectious disease threats, the communicable diseases threats, many of which are vaccine preventable diseases that have continued. So things like measles, things like Mpox, I think really kind of underscore and highlight that. So next slide. Sure. So I wanted to provide some historical context. I recently hit the 10-year mark here at CCDPH, which I suppose makes me an old-timer at this point. One of the first things that I remember happening when I started back in 2014 was the closure of brick and mortar immunization and family planning clinics that CCDPH had scattered all over suburban Cook County. So that happened in 2014, and I would argue that was the right decision in that moment, because if you recall, ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare had just come into effect, was really scaling up, and we were seeing decreasing numbers of individuals seeking vaccinations because they were looking to finally get the primary care that we all know that they have a right to. As such, the staff were transitioned over to CCH, to ACHN clinics. The clinics were closed. Again, that was the appropriate decision, but there were some things that we lost with that. We lost our VFC status, so we lost this ability to receive free vaccine, particularly vaccine in the setting of an outbreak. There's some consequences that sort of cascade from that make us getting vaccine in the setting of an outbreak from IDPH sort of challenging. So we did thereafter, though, hold a number of mobile clinics over the years. These were all ad hoc in response to various public health threats, ranging from a measles outbreak back in 2015 to a multi-state outbreak of hepatitis A. Of course, during COVID, we had this massive scale-up of vaccination operations. Our agency distributed over 1 million doses of vaccine to providers across suburban Cook County. Our staff and vendors that we had contracted with themselves provided tens of thousands of doses into arms for some of our most vulnerable populations. And then, of course, as we were starting to see the pandemic wane, again, we were reminded of the importance of this operation when Mpox happened, and again, as I mentioned, with measles. So clearly, there's a need for us to continue doing this good work. And I think there's broad consensus that while most of our vaccination operations ceased at the end of 2023, they were funded through ARPA. This was COVID vaccination. It was a time-limited effort. It made sense to scale that back. We shouldn't just sort of cede that territory. That entire stream of work shouldn't evaporate. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today. So as we started to talk about this and think about this thinking of like, okay, what comes next? We started to talk to colleagues at other local health departments. And by we, I mean a really amazing preventive medicine resident from the residency here at Stroger named Carmen Reed, and a vendor that we had contracted with, colleagues from the Illinois Public Health Institute assisted with this. So on the next slide, you should see the results of some of those conversations. We tried to frame this as an environmental scan. So we spoke to colleagues at local health departments in the collar counties, as well as across the country. So folks at San Diego, folks in Texas, Harris County, surrounding Houston, as well as Wayne State. And we identified these 6 major, you could call them buckets or areas of work. I'm not going to sort of go through them. If you had to sort of ask me to sort of really boil down what we view the most critical functions here, we think, one, it's being out in the community, getting shots into arms for our most vulnerable residents, a lot of different reasons to do that. And 2, working very closely with providers that serve those residents, that serve those communities, to make sure that they're leveraging their own population health tools, their own EHRs, maybe AI, to identify individuals that may have slipped through the cracks and make sure that they're working to build systems that ensure that those individuals get vaccinated. Next slide.
Dr. Joshi?
Yes.
I thought, one, thank you for all the work that department does. I think it's tremendously important. As a community clinician, I thought that the work that the department did with ambulatory clinics and FQHCs during the pandemic was tremendous. And so I don't know if this environmental scan takes into account insights and lessons and learning from that as you think about planning.
Sure.
For the future.
This is a very sort of concise summary of the work that went into planning for this initiative. Truth be told, the environmental scan was one component. The after-action report from COVID was a major component. And my colleague here also led a lot of those efforts. I think may have been in contact with Family Christian, which I know is where you are working. And so yes, to answer your question, yes, those lessons learned are definitely integrated into this effort. So thank you for acknowledging that work. So I already sort of spoke to this in terms of the 2 major streams of work that I think we need to pursue. All of that work needs to be informed by data. Quite frankly, we do have some challenges there with the data. We're subject to data from systems that are not fully formed or incomplete or maybe flawed in some way. So what we end up having to do is kind of triangulate. So we're taking in data from iCare, which is the statewide immunization database. We're using data that is collected by colleagues from CDC. Again, that's very high level. I can't drill down to the community level using that data. And of course, we've had some really, I think, productive conversations with folks from county care to potentially leverage their data. Again, thinking ahead about how can we work with providers, with potentially payers as well, to leverage their population health tools, their incentive structures, all to ensure vaccine equity for our residents. Next slide. So I've been talking really fast here. I just want to move quickly. In terms of speaking of next steps, we are working with colleagues within our public health nursing unit and ACHN to hold off hours, open kind of clinics in all of the 5 ACHN clinics in suburban Cook County. That's an initiative that we did last year. We're going to repeat that this year. And then I am actively hiring for a manager for this new initiative. So if you know anyone, please let us know. We're hoping to have that position. It was just approved, hoping to have that position posted in the next few weeks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Lori Kittich, to speak to the emergency preparedness response unit.
Good morning. I don't speak as fluent as Dr. Joshi, so please forgive me. It's my first board meeting, so a little jittery, trying to get the nerves out. So I will try to make sure I get through my slides nice and quick for you. Next slide, please. So our emergency preparedness, the CCDPH Emergency Preparedness and Response Unit coordinates public health efforts in partnership with other disciplines, including local, county, state, and federal agencies, to effectively plan for, respond to, and recover from public health events, which could include natural disasters, disease outbreak, or bioterrorism, impacting the health and well-being of our suburban Cook County residents. This work is a federal imperative for state and local public health departments and is funded through ongoing funding through the CDC via Illinois Department of Public Health through 2 grants, which is the Emergency Preparedness Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant, and the City's Readiness Grant. And why do we need emergency preparedness and response? Well, the Public Health Accreditation Board, or FEB, has recognized emergency preparedness and response as a foundational public health service because emergencies can disrupt health systems and negatively impact population health. Our work minimizes injuries and deaths, prevents disease outbreaks and illnesses, ensures safe housing and facilities, protects healthcare facilities and services, it recovers, rebuilds, and strengthens health systems. So lessons learned through COVID-19, and there were a lot of gaps that we found, but these were the major gaps. We realized that there were gaps in CCDPH staff capacity that limited the response effectively. And we realized that during the pandemic, we realized the COVID-19 response required large facilities and systems to store and distribute PPE, test kits, and vaccines. We also realized that our plans were focused on bioterrorism and lacked sufficiency for responding to pandemic events. And we didn't have strong relationships with healthcare leadership and providers necessary for strong response and for information sharing processes. And our last realization was that all plans require regular training and exercises in order to be tested and validated. So because of those, our capacity of expansion, we went from 7 full-time employees to, our goal is to have 12 full-time employees. We increased capacity for management, planning, and inventory. And we are in the process of updating the following plans: the Pandemic Preparedness Plan, Employee Notification, the All Hazards Plan, the Mass Dispensing Plan, and we're also have 6 other plans that are in the queue to be updated. And we acquired a centrally located warehouse with a 10-year lease that will be fully operational in Q4 of 2024. So to break that, next slide, to break that down even more, if you look at our staff capacity, we increased to 12 full-time employees. The light blue areas are the newly added, will be the newly added positions that we have. And this will increase overall management capacity, planning capacity, inventory management capacity, and we also modified some job descriptions to allow emergency staff support for inventory operations. All these changes were responsive to lessons learned for COVID-19. So we are proud to announce that we have a new centrally located warehouse in Broadview. Once operational, the warehouse will be used to store vaccines and therapeutics along with a modest cache of PPE. The warehouse may also receive shipments from the Strategic National Stockpile, which would include vaccines, medications, PPE, and equipment. The building is 15,800 square feet, centrally located and close to major expressways. A 10-year lease was approved by the Cook County Health Board and the CCH Board of Commissioners. Renovations are underway, and we expect to be fully operational by Q4 2024 or possibly Q1 of 2025. We're excited to get this warehouse up and running. I think it would be a major improvement to what we currently have. So,
I'm sorry, is the renovation of the start Q4? The renovation, ready, operational Q4. This is the question that they're actually doing internal now, right?
Yeah, we're working on this right now, and we're hoping that it'll be up and running Q4, Q5, or Q4, Q1, forgive me.
So, next slide. So emergency planning is critical to ensure CCDPH staff and partners have the systems, equipment, and capacity to respond to public health emergencies. All CCDPH emergency response plans will be strengthened and updated with lessons learned from COVID-19. Pandemic preparedness and the medical countermeasure dispensing plans will be updated by Q4 2025. And then CCDPH has been building relationships with suburban Cook County healthcare providers. We are planning to convene partners for regular healthcare public health updates. And this will include our hospitals, our FQHCs, and eventually dialysis centers, to labs, to pharmacies. We're just going to try to make a robust system. This will assist in information sharing and ensuring that everyone has the most up-to-date information as we do. And last but not least is training and exercise. Staff regularly participate in drills and exercise with federal, state, and local partners. Recently, we held a chemical spill exercise with the southwest suburbs, and we also held an internal CCDPH incident command system-wide workshop. Training and exercise provides a low-risk environment to test capabilities, familiarize personnel with roles and responsibilities, foster meaningful interactions with internal and external partners, and improve communication across all organizations. So in closing, I think in the beginning of COVID, if you asked anyone what EPRU did, no one really knew what we did. And we hope that after COVID-19 and after that we accomplished, that by the end of this, everyone will know who Immersive Preparedness and Response Unit is. We're very proud of our small but mighty team.
Well, you're growing team.
Yes, yes.
Not surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Just a quick question from your org chart. I don't see, Dr. Karen also mentioned the importance of data, and I'm assuming, emergency preparedness requires heavy-duty data prediction and identifying high-risk populations and locations. So where is that sort of data work going to be?
We work closely with our, so a couple of responses to that. One, in terms of thinking about what populations we prioritize and sort of focus on, that's all driven by equity considerations. There's a number of approaches you can take to do that. The standard in preparedness, as recommended by CDC, is looking at the so-called social vulnerability index, which some of you may be familiar with. We do have that data. It's all available on our health atlas, so cookcountyhealthatlas.org. It has all of our indicators, including that social vulnerability index. So that's how we think about, well, okay, if there's an incident, where do we really need to focus efforts? The other thing to sort of think about is using data like payer data. Where do we have pockets of people that are uninsured and could struggle to get connected with care? And then finally, most of the public health incidents that we would be responsible for taking the lead on would be communicable diseases incidents. And that data lives somewhere, either with us or with the Illinois Department of Public Health. We routinely analyze that data also available in various places. So while that data function, it doesn't sit in this unit, we're very strong on that, and we have capabilities across our agency. Thank you.
You led with, in 2014, we lost DFC status.
Yes.
Have we since regained that?
Yes. So, like most of the requirements for regaining that DFC status relate to having that warehouse up and running.
Okay.
You have to be able to. There are very stringent requirements around vaccine storage. So we're actually in the process of working with IDPH to regain that status. And again, I hope as soon as this warehouse is up and running, we will have that again. Yeah, and the intention is twofold. One, we will then be able to receive emergency supplies of vaccines, so say like MMR vaccine in the setting of an outbreak. Right now, that vaccine actually has to go to an ACHN site and then be rerouted to support our operations. That's not an ideal setup, particularly in the setting of an outbreak. And then as we scale up our own immunization operations, we want to be able to access that supply of free vaccine and get into the arms of people who really need it.
Thank you.
Jeff?
I assume the answer to this is yes, but it seems like there's increasing energy at the federal level on this topic. And so I suspect that there are more resources deployed from the federal to state, local levels for pandemic planning, emergency preparedness planning. So just suspect that you're thinking about this in that context, or how do you think about accessing those for the right
need?
I'm actually, so, if you know something I don't know, I'd love to hear it. Our understanding, so we were thinking towards the end of the pandemic that public health emergency preparedness grant funding, which Lori mentioned earlier, that would increase. It has not increased. The positions that we added to the org chart that you saw highlighted in, teal, are all ARPA funded. So I was really excited actually to hear about how there's this commitment to continue supporting those staff. We view those staff as critical public health infrastructure. This isn't like some sort of time-limited grant project that we're trying to do.
We can talk offline. I think there's increasing resources around emergency preparedness different, in the context of this, across the healthcare stakeholder ecosystem. So,
yeah, I haven't seen that, Dr. Buck, but again, happy to talk with you offline if you're aware of funding streams.
Just wanted to respond to Director Kemp's question about in-house capacity, in-house expertise around the data streams. So although you don't see positions in this particular unit, we do leverage the positions that we have in two other units, namely communicable diseases, where we have a number of epidemiologists embedded there. So they harness and mine the state data, and then we have an epi unit of 5 epidemiologists, which also basically procures the data for our health atlas and also mine and analyze a lot of data in-house. So we do have that in-house capacity. They don't sit here, but they'll be leveraging those data streams and working with them. Then, of course, we have our public health nurses, which can give us kind of on-the-ground data as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lori. Good job. Karen, good job.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you all.
Thank you. Next we have, Mr. Aaron Galena, who will, provide a review of the managed care committee meeting metrics. Aaron, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you, Chair. All right, beginning with our membership metrics, as of July 5th, we are at 426,000 members. I'll talk in a slide or two about how that's been changing over time and overall relatively stable membership month to month with a slight decrease from the prior month. On the next slide, you can see our market share data. So this is from the state data set and is as of April 2024, so it's a bit lagged. But you can see that we've increased over a full percentage point in market share compared to the rest of the market. We used to be closer to 33%, we're now at 34.2%. That's really related to us adding the health fee benefit for immigrant adult population, which came on to county care between January and April earlier this year. The rest of the market's held pretty steady. Really, there hasn't been much significant change in the other plans' market shares. There's been a somewhat kind of equivalent 1 percentage point decrease across the rest of the market. It hasn't seemed like that's been centralized at any one plan. Next slide shows how that market share, you can see the gain here. So on the right side is the overall enrollment in Medicaid managed care throughout Cook County across all plans. The left-hand side in the blue line is our county care enrollment. So you can see that generally we were tracking very close to the rest of the market until January when we began having that transition happen with the 35,000 individuals who eventually joined us from the HBIA and HBIS population. The next slide shows our membership compared to our budget. So blue bars here was projected budget, red bars is actuals. Obviously, we're really exceeding our overall budget targets, and again, that's related to that transition of HBIA and HBIS members into the plan, which wasn't expected at the time that we did the budget last year. So if you kind of account for that 35,000, we're still exceeding our overall budget projections, and that's really related to some outperformance on redetermination and the amount of retention that we've had within the plan, but obviously would not be exceeding the budget quite to the level that we are without the HBIA transition. The next slide shows our redetermination scores, and as we keep going on, the slide gets a little harder to read, but if you look at that top blue line, that's really our trend on successful retention each month. So you can see this past month, we had a jump up almost to 89%, which is great. We've generally been around that 84% range throughout the year, and our base level expectation as we came into this process was that we would be around 80% overall retention. So excited we have a team that's working extremely hard around this. We've had a very large number of outreach and community events, as well as a number of different outreach strategies to members to help them through this process. We are heavily focused right now on the HBIA and HBIS population. That entire population is going through the redetermination process, and they're, unlike other Medicaid members, have not been phased through that process, so that they're going through that all at once. The state has provided 2 extensions now to the deadline, so the last and final deadline for individuals to submit their paperwork is August of this year. So overall, as we head towards August, we expect at that point we'll have better line of sight on retention, specifically of that HBIA and HBIS population, and at that point we'll also be through this large initial 12-month wave of individuals going through redetermination since the first time since before the pandemic. So at that point, we expect a lot of stabilization in terms of our overall membership, and we should see a much more normalized membership trend that we would expect at that point.
But Director Galena, I just want to add, I pointed out and recognized the work that your team is doing and everyone. Illinois and Maine, again, were the 2 leading states for redetermination during this period. And I think with this all-time high that you just reported, we may have jumped over the state of Maine. So again, I want to, just for the record, recognize the efforts and the hard work in retaining this population that we've done. Is standing up beyond and getting the recognition that it deserves.
Well done.
And since we are at the 1-year mark, do we have comparisons with the other Illinois Medicaid servers, or is that forthcoming, do you think, now that we'll be at 1 year since the redetermination?
Yeah, we've seen that data somewhat intermittently. We've been on any given month the number 1 or number 2 plan in terms of overall retention. Certainly much better also than Medicaid fee-for-service. Medicaid fee-for-service retention is somewhere in the 70% range. So it's, almost a 15 to 20% better retention rate within the plan. The next slide shows our operations metrics. No real call-outs here. These are all within our SLAs. As mentioned, we're watching these measures very closely, though, because especially with redetermination happening right now, we want to ensure that anyone who's calling in, who's looking for assistance, that we're getting them connected and that we're ensuring that we have the right resources allocated to them. The next slide shows our inpatient admissions per 1,000. This trend has remained relatively steady at this point year over year. We are expecting that as redetermination completes, we'll see some higher acuity left within the plan. So if you look at the bars here, red bars is prior period, the darker blue is current period, so generally slightly lower utilization year over year. But if you look at the light blue bars there, that's our projections going forward, and we're expecting utilization to incrementally increase again as redetermination completes, and we're left with an overall population of the plan that has some higher acuity. The next slide just shows our claims payment trends, which are ranging just north of the 30-day mark. And if you go to the next slide, this breaks it down by the 30, 60, and 90-day category. Most of that aging is right in that 30 to 60-day bucket. Our average turnaround right now is closer to about 40-day turnaround time. So we're continuing to work to try to drive that down to the 30-day range, which we're expecting over the course by the end of July, that will be right at that 30-day mark based on the last couple payment cycles that are currently going out. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions ahead of our August 2nd Managed Care Committee meeting.
Congratulations on the 88.9.
Thank you. Thank you. The team's been doing an incredible amount of work and job with the outreach and engagement of our members.
Thank you very much. Time is good. That is our special finance meeting. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The board will not be going into closed session today, so if there are no other questions or matters to discuss, we can move to the adjournment of the meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that we have a special finance committee meeting being held today after the board meeting, scheduled at 11:30 in 6 minutes. To introduce the proposed, it is starting in 6 minutes, yes it is. To introduce the proposed CCH fiscal year 2025 preliminary budget. So if you are able to stay for that presentation, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Given that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Everybody's ready to go. I appreciate that. Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. The motion carries, means adjourned. Everybody.